Welcome to the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast, a podcast where we teach speakers how to land paid speaking engagements and corporate contracts. Each week, we deliver high-quality content that teaches you how to level up your speaking business. Be sure to join the Speak Your Way to Cash Facebook group after having your mind blown by this information-filled episode. Now, here's your host, Ashley Kirkwood, lawyer and professional speaker. This is the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast.
Hey, Speak Your Way to Cash fam, it's Ashley Kirkwood back again with Grant Baldwin. I'm so excited about this interview. Grant actually has the Speaker Lab podcast, and he's also a speaking coach and world-renowned speaker and just phenomenal all-around person. So I'm super excited to interview him. Grant, welcome to Speak Your Way to Cash.
Ashley, thanks for letting me hang out with you. Appreciate it.
Definitely. So Grant, tell us how you started speaking.
Yeah, so my career actually goes back to growing up in high school. I was really involved in my local church and my youth group, and my youth pastor was a phenomenal speaker. And so I was like, I want to do that. That seems like a cool gig. And so I went to Bible college. Actually, in college, I worked for a guy who was a full-time speaker. So I kind of got to see a little bit behind the scenes. And like a lot of speakers, like I didn't necessarily realize that was an option to be a speaker. I didn't really know it was a thing. I thought it was just, a handful of people went around to do that, churches or schools or whatever. And so I finally got to see a little bit behind the scenes, like, oh, that's what it's like. And that's actually a thing. So then after college, I worked at a local church as a youth pastor, did a lot of speaking there. And speaking was one of those things I really enjoyed. I felt like I was decent at it, wasn't the best, wasn't the worst, but it was something I really enjoyed doing, wanted to do more of. So then after that, met a couple of guys who were speaking full time, and really just kind of like, okay, I want to go all in on that. And so for the next several years, was a full-time speaker, speaking 60, 70 times a year, all over primarily the U.S. and doing a lot in the education space, and just loved it. It was a lot of fun. And then got to a point a few years ago where I had a lot of people asking me, Grant, I want to be a speaker. I want to do what you've done. How do I do that? And so that's where we started building more of our different training tools and resources for speakers, and trying to help speakers get started in their business.
That is awesome. So I want to go back to you saying you were a youth pastor, and then you were like, I started speaking doing 60 or 70 gigs a year. There are people listening who are like, that is not how my life works. Like, I've decided I want to speak. I do not have 70 gigs a year lined up, people begging to pay me to speak. So do you remember during the early stages how you were able to land those first 5, 10 engagements, and then how did it snowball to 60 to 70 a year, which is a lot. That's a lot of travel. Yeah.
And so, and a caveat there. So it wasn't like, on Friday, I was like, all right, I'm going to quit being a youth pastor on Monday. Like, I got all these gigs lined up. Like, as you all know, like, it doesn't work like that. And so there's probably going from, all right, 0 gigs to 70 gigs. I think it was like 5 years, 6 years, somewhere in there. So it's actually absolutely like a momentum thing. So the first year was probably 15, 20 gigs. The second year was 30 gigs, 35, 40, 50, 67. So you're just kind of like slowly, incrementally building up there. And so one of the things we tell our students all the time is speaking is very much a momentum business. And when you're trying to get like the first gig booked and you're trying to get that boulder going, it can feel incredibly impossible. It feels like you're pushing a boulder uphill. But once you get some of the momentum going, then it actually becomes a little bit easier to get gigs. Because one of the best ways to get gigs is by actually doing gigs. Because what happens is you end up having a lot of repeat business, you have a lot of referral, you have a lot of spinoff, you have a lot of word of mouth. And some of those things that you can like reverse engineer and put some like thought and effort into how you're going to use each gig to leverage into more gigs. But sometimes it's some like random stuff that you can't necessarily plan for. So for example, I remember like one of my first big breaks was I did a gig that was a couple hours away from me. It was a smaller gig. They had a small budget of $500. And I was like, like they weren't going to be able to cover any travel. Like it's probably going to be basically break even. When I did the gig went great. And it was for this like small little state organization. Well, the wife of the national director of that same organization happened to be in the audience. And so she came up to me afterwards and said, hey, that was awesome. I'm going to tell my husband about you, and I want him to book you for some in the future. So sure enough, like a week later, he calls me and says, hey, my wife said you're awesome, and I want to hire you to come speak at a couple of our national conferences. So a few months later, I was the opening keynote for several of their big national conferences. And so when I go do this small little random event a couple hours away for $500, you can't really plan on, well, okay, if I do this right event, then the wife of the right person is going to be there, and she's going to see me, and she's going to tell him, and yada, yada, yada. But the more you speak, the more those type of opportunities present themselves. And the more someone else sees you. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I got booked for an event happening a couple months from now. And it was for a gig that I had done back in 2013. And it was a different guy who's in charge of the event now. And so I asked him, I said, I did the event a long time ago. but how did you come across my information? And he said he was in the audience back in 2013. He's like, I still remember your talk. I remember what you talked about, and I want you to come back. Now, I can't, like in 2013, I can't say, okay, I'm going to do this gig, and then 7 years later, it's going to come full circle. I'm going to be able to do it again. But the more you speak, the more those type of opportunities happen, and you start to build a little bit of word of mouth, and you start to build some of that momentum. So I would say for any speaker at any point who's watching or listening to this, like have a long-term perspective and don't think that I'm going to go from 0 to 30 or 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 in the matter of a minute, because it just doesn't work like that.
Right.
But if you stick with it, you will build up some of that momentum, and it actually becomes easier long-term to book more of those gigs.
Hey guys, it's Ashley Kirkwood here, and I know this is an amazing interview. And if you are someone who is interested in taking your speaking career to the next level, then do I have something for you? Okay, I need you to go to AshleyNicoleKirkwood.com/SYWTC live replay. That's AshleyNicoleKirkwood.com/SYWTC live replay. The link is also in the show notes that you can grab the Speak Your Way to Cash live replay, which has 7 modules, a ton of information about how you can start speaking your way to cash. Now, this training is absolutely action-packed, phenomenal. It has additional resources. It has templates. It has a podcast pitch template, a college pitch template, something you can send to media outlets to get on television. It has everything you need to develop a sales strategy, a press strategy, and a plan to skyrocket your speaking career. And it is crazy affordable, okay? So head on over there right now, AshleyNicoleKirkwood.com/SYWTC live replay, and grab your copy today. All right, let's get back to this interview.
Definitely. So it's a lot to unpack there. And I think that people listening, if you did not hear, he said about 5 years. It's not a get rich quick industry. And the other thing, we talked a lot about there are things that just happen. Someone sees you speak, they're married to someone who has the ability to hire you. All those things are great. But one of the things that we talk a lot about on Speak Your Way to Cash is systematizing your business so that those random things that happen are like bonuses. But the systems behind the business is really what makes it work. And I know that you teach amazing systems, and your students have had great success utilizing those. At what point in your career did you start putting in systems, or were you doing everything manually? So were you, your year one, were you just pitching hundreds of people blind and asking to come and speak? Or did you automate any of that? How did those early stages look? Since most people listening are in the first 5 years of speaking.
Yeah, so you want to put in systems and processes from day one. And so you want to make it a repeatable thing, because each time you book a gig, each time you actually do a gig, there's steps that need to take place. So before the gig, leading up to the gig, after the gig, all of that, as well as even just the booking process. So the outreach process, the prospecting process, the follow-up process, okay, I booked it, now what happens process, like all of that, there should be processes and systems. And by systems, I don't necessarily, there's a tool and you push a button and then like everything automatically happens or takes place. Like some of it is like a lot of manual things, but there's systems and tools in place to remind you of what needs to happen next. So it's not like, okay, I reached out to a client and they asked me for something. Now what do I do? And you're trying to come up with something from scratch versus you have those systems in place. So a way to think about this is in the book E-Myth by Michael Gerber. He talks about that businesses are run on systems, and systems are run by people. I may butcher that, but some variation of that. And so you have to have those systems in your business. And so the example he gives is the analogy of like someone who's baking pies, right? And there's a different skill set for baking pies versus running a bakery. Those are two totally different things. And so the same thing is true for speakers. You have to recognize that part of what you are doing is you are wearing the hat of I am a speaker. I'm getting on stage to deliver a message and to help an audience. And the other hat I have to wear is that of an entrepreneur. And so my job is, as the entrepreneur, is sales and marketing and letting people know who it is, what I do, and booking gigs and customer service and providing a great experience. So all of that stuff requires systems, because there's some of the best speakers on the planet are a pain in the butt to work with. And by pain in the butt, I don't mean like a prima donna or a diva or anything like that. I just mean that they're sloppy, they're unorganized, they don't have systems. And so it makes it actually difficult on the client. And clients don't want to work with speakers like that. They want to work with speakers who are good on stage and good off stage. And so you can do that by creating systems and having those repeatable processes that make it easy for clients to want to work with you.
Definitely. So one of the things that I'd like to know, because you talk about systems and everyone's heard of email marketing as a speaker, where you're sending out emails, you're doing pitches, but you've been in the industry how many years now?
Let's see, 12 years, 13 years, something like that.
12 years. So what are some creative marketing strategies that you've seen really work or that clients have actually commented on? Because I was listening to not a speaker, but a business owner who owns a law firm, and he was saying that he sends ladders on Christmas and they're extremely expensive and they're huge gifts. But if he has some message that's like, I want you, we're going to the top, we'd love to take you with us, etc.
Yeah.
And his clients apparently love it. He's been very successful in his niche. So I'm wondering, as a speaker, what are some creative marketing strategies that you've used or that your students have used that have been super successful?
Yeah, so the speaking is very much a relationship business. And at the end of the day, it's no different than a lot of other like service-based businesses where people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And so whenever you are providing, you're really clear on who you speak to, what's the problem that you solve, the more that you can build that personal connection, that personal relationship. Because sending a bunch of emails, it can work. It may not be the most effective all the time. And certainly a lot of it goes into like how much customization you may be doing there versus just kind of a, kind of mass spam type of email, which I wouldn't recommend at all. Because everybody on the other end, we can all tell, like we all get a lot of email, anybody at any level, we all get a lot of email. So we can tell the difference between an email that was sent to you specifically versus you plus, 100 or 1,000 other people. So you want to make sure that if you're going to be sending some type of email, that it is going to be specific and customized to that other person on the receiving end. Now, there's little things that you can do, little things like just sending like a ladder could work, but a couple of variables that you want to think through there is you want to be pretty confident if you're going to be sending a ladder, which I'm assuming cost of the ladder, cost of ship. I don't even know what it costs to ship a ladder, but it can be cheap. That you want to be pretty confident that it's going to lead to a booking on the other end.
Right.
And so also just kind of doing the math where like if you, say you're a newer speaker and you charge, $500 or $1,000, and so you don't have a ton of budget to work with to get the ball rolling, sending ladders, sending 5 ladders, 10 ladders, 100 ladders is going to become really cost prohibitive very, very quickly. So some little things that you could do though to stand out from the crowd. One would be you could send customized videos to people. So you can do this from your phone. You can do this through a tool like Bonjoro or Loom or Screencastify, where basically what you're doing is you're recording a video. So instead of just kind of a generic text email that you're sending someone else, I can talk specifically to you. Hey, Ashley, this is Grant. I just come across your event and I see it's happening in Chicago and the States and yada, yada, yada. And so you on the other end of this, you're watching and you're going like, oh, wow, they said my name. They're talking specifically about my event. This is not like some copy and paste email, but clearly this is specifically for me. Now, to do that times 100 people or so is not necessarily any investment of cost, but other than the investment of time. Right. And especially when you're in the beginning, early on, like you got typically more time than you have money. And so something like that can work really well. The other thing I would really strongly consider is try to think through, especially in your market, in your niche, the primary decision makers, where do they gather? What are the primary events, associations, groups, conferences that they're a part of? Is there some type of natural gathering where they're all together? So there's a few when I was speaking 60, 70 times a year, there's a few industry events that I knew that if I could go to those events and either do a workshop or even just kind of meet some of the decision makers there, that if I can meet them in person, that it would change the dynamic of the relationship. Because now I'm not just an email address, or I'm not just some random speaker that's pitching them, but I'm someone that like they've built some type of rapport, some type of connection with. So figuring out where those people are and actually going to the event to meet them. So your cost at that point may just be travel, right? I remember hearing about a speaker who he would do this regularly with, and he was a corporate speaker who was charging, high 5 figures. And so he said, whenever I had a client that was a really like warm lead, he said a lot of times I would, depending on where they were located, I would just book a cheap Southwest flight and fly there for the day. I'd fly there in the morning. I'd meet with them for an hour or two or go to lunch with them and then fly back. And he's like, it cost me a couple $100. I'm not trying to stay overnight. I'm not trying to book a bunch of travel, but he's like, I'd fly there, hang out with them for a little bit and then fly back. But he said, anytime I did that, I almost always booked the gig. And so because he was charging over $10,000, then he knew that, man, if I can just spend $500 to go hang out with someone, there's probably a good chance that they're going to book me. One other quick idea on that note is one of your best marketing tools is a great talk. And so I knew that anytime I would go speak, I would try to be aware of other potential event planners or potential clients who are in the area, and I would invite them to come see me speak. Because again, if they, one, got to see me speak, and two, I got to meet them, I knew that oftentimes that would lead to a gig. So there's a lot of events I booked that way by just connecting with them in person and then letting them get to see me speak. Because there's some clients that won't. I can think of one lady in particular. She's like, you seem like a great person, but I will not book a speaker that I have not seen in person. And that's just kind of the rule that she followed. And so I knew that the only way I was going to get a gig was to get her to come see me speak somewhere. So I wanted to be aware of that. So anytime I knew, okay, I'm going to be speaking in, the Dallas area, I got to make sure that I invite so-and-so to come see me speak. So those type of again, personal interactions, those personal touch points can really make a big difference.
Yeah. And that's really cool, especially if you can land something like a TED Talk and just buy 10 tickets for clients and invite them out, because those events, they already know what they are and they're already probably interested in going, and they almost always sell out. So if you have 10 tickets that you can give to clients, and that's a great way to do it as well. But I love those suggestions a lot. And you mentioned that you would go to some industry events, and we've talked on this show a lot about the college industry events. So APCA, NACA, NODA, there's so many more that are all like those associations in the college world. But you mentioned you were speaking for state organizations as well as high schools, as well as some colleges. So what did your industry event scope look like? What are some of the organizations that you recommend that people join or speak at? I know for the college market, you typically are paying to speak at those events and showcase. Is it similar for some of the ones that you did, and what did those entail?
For college, for a second, I've actually done several NODA conferences, the national conference a couple times, as well as several of the regional conferences. The regional conferences can be really good too, because they may, especially if you're trying to limit your travel. I remember the first NODA conference I did, it was a regional conference that was just a 4-hour drive from me. And so it wasn't like I was having to pay big expenses to, fly across the country or something like that. So I would definitely look into some of those NODA regional conferences, and same with APCA, NACA. And so as far as paying to showcase, that can be worthwhile. Again, as long as you kind of run the numbers and you know whether or not that makes sense for you and what it is that you're trying to do. And the education space, for high schools, some of it depends on the type of conferences and events that you want to be speaking to. If you want to be speaking to general student leadership conferences, there's several big organizations like the National Association of Student Council. They have a great summer conference that I would recommend being at. FCCLA, FBLA, DECA, FFA, 4-H, BPA. So there's a variety of those type of organizations that are usually student leadership conferences and events. A lot of them have national and then sometimes spring or fall regional conferences that are worth being at, because again, that's where a lot of those decision makers may ultimately end up.
And are there any that you've attended for corporate events? So I know that I do Society of Human Resources. Have you found any of those for the folks who are more interested, not so much in education, but more so for corporate? Which events have you found to be most useful?
Yeah. So in corporate, again, it kind of depends on the industry. So you have, for example, within human resources, you have SHRM, which is the big one. So they have several different conferences and events. There's different bureaus that put on showcases, but typically not as big on those because it's running through a bureau and so it's a little bit harder to get in with. But so I would just say one of the best things you can do, depending on who you speak to, depending on the industry that you're in, is to just do a quick Google search of, so if you speak to dentists, what's the National Dentist Conference? What's the National Dentist Association? Or if you speak to
and I found that those will actually pay you.
Yeah. So just doing a quick Google search on what some of those national conferences and events are. And again, if for example, let's say you live in Chicago and the event is in LA and you're like, I don't want to go out to LA, but there's going to be some type of either regional or statewide conference that's in Chicago or in your area, then try going to that first and see, what comes of that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you always have to travel a significant difference or for a significant expense in order to go to some of those national conferences.
And what are your thoughts on this question? Do you believe there are some speaking topics that are recession-proof?
Some speaking topics that are recession-proof. That's a good question. Yeah, I think so. I think that whenever it comes to potential recessions, and I know that there's talk of, is there going to be one, in the next year or two? Hypothetically, we're due. And I know with the last one that the speaking industry, was affected in some ways, but I think it also comes down to that it's not necessarily that events are not all of a sudden hiring speakers. It's that they have to be a little bit more selective. So at an event where maybe they're used to hiring 3 or 4 speakers, maybe they're just hiring 2 speakers. So it's not necessarily that all of a sudden, we're not hiring anymore. If anything, I think it presents an advantage for newer and up and coming speakers, because an event where maybe previously they had a speaker that was a $30,000 speaker, they're like, we'd love to have that speaker. We'd love to have, their name recognition. We can't afford that. but we can't afford a speaker for $5,000. That's what we have to work with. Now, we still want a strong speaker. It's not like, okay, our budget's been cut significantly, therefore, we're willing to accept a crap speaker. Like, they don't want to do that. They still want a quality speaker. So that also creates opportunities for speakers to be able to come in and provide significant value that, wow, even though economy's down or market's down or whatever, and there's fewer opportunities, the speaker is still really delivering and is an amazing value. So it's kind of anytime, and this isn't true for just speakers, but any type of product or service that you buy that you feel like, wow, I got an amazing value for that, or I got way more than what I paid for. Or the opposite could be the case where I feel like I got ripped off, that I way overpaid for what I actually received from that. And so you want to be the speaker that the event planner is like, I can't believe we got this experience from this speaker for X amount of dollars. Like, we should have paid double for that. You want to be positioning yourself in that. So I think that's the type of speaker that can still do well. Like, even and I look back, like when, there's some market and economy issues back in, 2008, 9, 10. That's when I was just like somewhat getting started and kind of early in my career, and still was able to like book a lot of gigs, in part because I was kind of that lower fee speaker, but also because I know a lot of the value that I brought had nothing to do with what I was doing on stage, but just providing a great experience and great to work with. So yeah, I think there's probably going to be some industries and topics that maybe hit harder than others. But at the same time, if you're speaking on, let's say customer service or sales or leadership or innovation or change, all those are topics that are going to be relevant in a down market, because companies are needing to innovate and they're needing to change and they're needing strong leadership and they're needing sales. And so and providing great customer service. So all of these are things that can still make a difference and still move the needle for a company. And so therefore, as a speaker, as long as you're positioning yourself properly, you should still be able to do fine.
Definitely. That's really good insight. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about are business models as a speaker, and what type of business models make the most sense for your long-term goals. And I know a lot of this will be individualistic, but we've had speakers on the show who only do 10 engagements a year, but they're corporate engagements. And so they're hitting their 6 figures, and others who do any engagement that comes in their inbox. Yeah. So they're doing quite a few additional engagements. But have you been able, or have you had experience with the model of going after national brands, and then you book, your client is Allstate, they hire you to do all their regional trainings for the year, that's your 35 engagements. And what do you think about building that business model out? Or would you suggest for newer speakers that they build, I consider the slower way, which is just getting like 50 new clients every year, or 50 new clients and you have some repeat business in there?
Yeah. So great question. So as far as business models goes, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Right. So there are, like you mentioned, there's speakers that do 10 gigs a year. There's speakers. I talked to a speaker the other day who does 130 gigs a year, and that's what he wants to do. Like, that sounds crazy, but that's also for his stage of life, for what he wants to do, for what he's trying to accomplish. That's very different than, myself or maybe you or for anybody else, and where they're at, what they want to do. So stage of life, ultimate goals. So there's a lot of different variables that go into that. What I think is important is there's, again, not a right or wrong answer of like, in order to be a speaker, you have to do it this way, and you have to do this number of gigs, and you have to charge this much, or you're not a real speaker. It's like, none of that, that's complete BS. Like, you can still like decide like, hey, I have a full-time job, or I have a full-time business already, and I'd love to do 5 gigs or 10 gigs, and that's all I can do. And I'm doing it not to get paid, but maybe for lead gen for other parts of the business. That's all fine. Again, there's not necessarily like you have to do it this way or you have to do it that way. So ultimately getting clear on what makes sense for you, what it is that you are trying to accomplish. Now, for your question of, hey, what if you work with one client and you do a bunch of gigs for them? Can that work? Absolutely. Of course. I remember a couple years ago, I had booked a gig working with a client, and then I booked a second gig, and then they'd asked me about a third gig. And finally they came back and said, hey, can we just hire you to do like 10 or 12 events for the year for us? And we'll just kind of figure out what those 10 or 12 are. I was like, sure, let's do that. Now, that's nice when that happens. Absolutely. What I would be a little cautious on would be if I did 20 gigs for the year with them and it was all with them, and I'm banking on that because I have ultimately all of my eggs in one basket, right? Yeah. And also some of it kind of depends on the nature of the event and what it is that they're looking for. So it may just be, so for this particular thing, it was a series of conferences where we need you to come in, kind of do a one-off thing, but it wasn't like a recurring or repeatable thing. And so they didn't need me to do the same thing the following year. So if it was something where some type of training or new orientation or something where we have a new audience every year and we need you to come back and keep giving that, just that same presentation, just keep coming back for that. In colleges, orientations work really well for that because every year it's going to be a new audience and they want you to do more or less the same presentation and same talk. So that can work really well where you have a client that just brings you back. There's several colleges I worked with year after year after year after year after year for orientation, but that wasn't necessarily 10 or 20 gigs out of that. I was basically one in the fall and one in the winter for orientation. But I knew for that one client, that was pretty much repeatable. But again, like I was saying, the danger would be if you had all your eggs in one basket. And I work with basically one client who books me a bunch of stuff. And now all of a sudden the economy changes, the market changes. They bring in a new speaker, they bring it in-house, like something shifts that's beyond your control. And all of a sudden I went from having a full schedule to having no schedule because of one client. So that would be one thing to just be, aware of and be cautious of.
Definitely. And for those of you who are listening who want to do more with the college market, keep in mind that if you like working with that particular college, they will introduce you to other departments. And if they've already paid your rate, it's actually really good. And for state universities, they've been great about that. Like we've had one school that books us for 5 things every single year. And it's all from individuals of different departments. But then all 5 of those departments will also hire us for the next year. And we do something where if they book us within 2 weeks, then we'll do 10% off of the invoice. So it could be one client, different departments, and it's the same with corporations. Like there have been employee resource groups that bring me in for something smaller, but then they bring me and I speak to their general human resources department, and it just grows over time. But I do like the model of having a client that just pays you for 10 engagements for that year. The only thing is typically, in my experience, when they do book me multiple times, they have to see you that first time first. Mm-hmm. But it is important, at least in the initial conversation, to preview that is something you're interested in so that they're thinking about it. And I would invite the different departments to the engagement I'm doing for that initial department, just so that they can see me in action the first time. But that's great. And there are different models. Some people love being on a plane, which before I started a family, that was great. Now that I'm going to have like a little baby, that's not going to be happening. Like I'm not going to be just pick up and go. But last year, I would get a call on Monday and be on a plane by Wednesday. Like it was not a problem. So that's really good as well. So how have you seen the industry change over the past 12 years? And what do you recommend newer speakers kind of be aware of in your experience?
Yeah, I still think that, speaking is one of the nice things about speaking is it's something that has been around for literally decades and hundreds of years and will continue to be around. So it's not something that is necessarily like a fad or a trend. If we were teaching Pinterest marketing or something, it may be something that Pinterest may not be around in a few years, right? But something like speaking is something that has been around and will continue to be around. And the things that work well for speaking are the things that I think continue to work well and will continue to work well, meaning really providing a great experience for the client off the stage. I think that's one of the best things that a speaker can do to really differentiate themselves and in terms of just being great to work with. And so little things like whenever you tell a client, like, hey, I'm going to follow up with you in 2 weeks, that you follow up in 2 weeks. And when they send you an email and they need something from you, that they don't have to like chase you down for the next several weeks trying to get you to reply and get them what they need. When you say you're going to be at a sound check at a certain time, that you're at a sound check. When you land or when you're at the hotel, that you're texting a client, hey, just a heads up that I'm on site, I'm on property. If you need anything, let me know. That you don't just fly in and fly out, that you make an effort to hang out with attendees and that you're a part of the event. Like all these like little things. It's kind of like, have you been to Disney before?
Yeah. It's
a great experience, right? You have a great day at Disney, and it's not like you can look back and point to like, man, we went to Disney and this one ride, or we had this one hamburger, and that was the best part. It's like, what's great about Disney? It's 100 little things that they do well that leave you feeling like, man, this place is really magical. I don't know how they do it, right? And so that's ultimately what you want to provide as a speaker. Like, yes, they were amazing on stage. There's 100 little things that they did that was amazing, that made it an amazing experience to work with them. And so that's one of those type of things that is relevant in any industry at any level for any period of time. It's always going to like providing a great experience, taking care of the customer. So like strategies in terms of like how you present from stage or technology that you can use and some of those things that may always evolve and shift and change, but when you're really, really good at that as a speaker, you can be in business for a long time.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. That's customer service. Making sure you're providing a great customer service experience.
Yeah, 100%. And like that can really move the needle. I'll give you an example. Like when I was doing a lot of speaking, after an event, we would always ask the client for some type of testimonial or recommendation letter. And so the speaker, we enjoyed working with Grant. We loved working with Lisa. Lisa was amazing. Lisa did all this stuff with them on logistics stuff. And so Lisa helped make their life easy. And so Grant was part of it. Grant's what they hired to do on stage, but the experience off stage of interacting with Lisa and interacting with Grant's team, like that's ultimately what they really, really loved.
That is great. And at what point in your speaking career did you build a team?
Pretty early on. So, and I think building a team can have, like, it can feel overwhelming or can feel like, I can't afford a full-time person. Like early on for me, I brought on I had a couple people, but Lisa was the one that worked with me for about 9 years. And she handled all of the logistics, paid her when I did an event. And so we knew that, okay, anytime we booked an event, there are all these steps that needed to happen before, during, and after the event. And so I'd pay her a flat fee of, okay, I need you to do all of these tasks related to this event. Because when you're doing 2, 3, 4 events, you juggle that. But when you're doing, 50, 60, 70 events, it's a lot to start to keep track of. So I think when I had around to help with that, and they're just part-time, great win for both of us, that she had the freedom and flexibility to help with some of these things. She was able to take a lot of these things off of my plate. And we were able to build some of those, processes and systems that, again, of 14 people. But that's, again, not same with like, how do you go from 0 to 60 gigs? How do you go from 0 to X number of team members? It doesn't happen overnight. It's just kind of as the business evolves and shifts and changes and grows, and depending on what you need,
right?
And again, also what it is that you're trying to accomplish, kind of determines what types of roles that you may want to hire.
That makes a lot of sense. And I like what you said about you paid her when you did an event. That's great, because a lot of people, I'm sure, are thinking, well, I don't know if I can afford to bring someone on. But if you're getting paid to speak, then you know that you can afford to bring someone on.
Yeah. So there was we never had a flat salary or flat retainer or anything for her. It's just, you get paid when I get paid. And so that meant that when I'm busy, you're busy, and therefore you're going to make more. But that also meant the opposite was true. So, in, let's say, like a December, which is pretty notoriously slow for most speakers, if I don't have anything going on, I don't have anything for you to do, I don't have anything to pay you. So it also helped from like a cash flow standpoint and so she also knew she would get a percentage out of that. And whenever we got the final payment, she would get a percentage out of that. And so she knew, she was incentivized then to get the deposit and to make sure that Grant got the check at the event, and we didn't have to chase the client down, for weeks afterwards, because then she knew, again, she didn't get paid until I got paid. So it helped from that perspective as well.
Hey guys, it's your host, Ashley Kirkwood. As many of you know, I'm also an attorney, but did you know that I own a law firm called Mobile General Counsel? This quick commercial is brought to you by Mobile General Counsel, the law firm for speakers and entrepreneurs. We help you bulletproof your brand with contracts and trademarks. Every speaker knows the importance of having a solid contract. Did you also know that it is equally as important that once you develop that rock star signature speech, you get it trademarked, meaning you can then prevent other speakers from using the title of your signature speech all across the country. Trademarking is something that we do at our firm, and we do it for a flat fee, and we even have different payment arrangements based on your actual budget. So please do give us a call at 312-880-8518 or head on over to mobilegeneralcounsel.com and book a consultation today. That's mobilegeneralcounsel.com and book a consultation today. Talk to you soon. Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's really good. Really, really good.
Cool.
So I know that you have a book coming out. Tell us a little bit about that project and what we can expect.
Yeah. So I've had people ask for a long time, you ever going to do a book? And so the timing finally worked out where it made sense to do one. And so we've been working on this for the past couple of years. 5 steps for really, really excited about the book. We would take a lot of what we've talked about here today and flesh it out even more, and just giving people a step-by-step process and a playbook for actually how to find and book gigs on a consistent basis. We want this to be a handbook and a guide that people can refer back to over the long haul. And so we didn't hold anything back. We put everything in there of exactly what you need to know and exactly what you need to do to build and grow your speaking business. So yeah, check it out. You can find it at at thespeakerlab.com/book, thespeakerlab.com/book. So especially if you pre-order, it comes out February 18th. There's several different bonuses that we include there, including the audiobook we'll give you for free when you pre-order. So all the information again is over at thespeakerlab.com/book.
Perfect. And what's the name of the book again?
The Successful Speaker, 5 steps for booking gigs, getting paid, and building your platform.
Perfect. That's what every speaker wants. So that is
I think so. We'll find out.
For sure. That's going to be a huge success. I already know. And when did you start going into coaching? Was that soon, about 5 years into your speaking career, and how did you build that practice? Because that's been really big as well.
Yeah. I mean, going back to like the business model thing, I think, one of the things about speaking is really fun. It's incredibly rewarding. It's a great way to travel and make an impact with people. The challenge is it's a high-paying manual labor job in that you get paid way too well to stand on stage and speak. But the nature of it is you have to get on stage, you have to travel, you have to leave your family, you have to go somewhere. And so it's kind of the trade-off to it. And so probably 5-6 years ago, I started having just a lot of people asking me like, hey, I want to be a speaker. I want to do that. And so started just the business increased. And I was decreasing the amount of speaking that I was doing. And so, yeah, I think that the thing that's been helpful from a coaching standpoint is there's a lot of people, and this isn't true just coaching, there's a lot of things of people who like, they have a little bit of experience, I've dabbled with this, and I've had a few people ask me about it. And so therefore, like, I want to get into the coaching side of it. And so I think one of the things that's really differentiated us and helped us is like, I was all in on speaking. I've done close to 1,000 paid speaking gigs and worked with hundreds of clients and been in front of thousands of people. So it's not from, I did a couple gigs and so now I'm going to teach that. Like I've been in the trenches, I know it works. And so I think that experience has definitely helped us in now teaching and coaching, with other speakers who are interested in getting into the world.
Perfect. And if our audience wants to stay in touch with you and find you, where can they find you at on the internet?
Yeah, basically everything that we do for speakers is at thespeakerlab.com, thespeakerlab.com. So actually, like you mentioned at the beginning, we host a podcast called The Speaker Lab. We've got, I think, 270 some episodes there if people want to check that out. Several free tools and resources over on and blog posts on the website at thespeakerlab.com. So yeah, lots of stuff and definitely check out the book when it comes out February 18th.
Awesome. And that's at thespeakerlab.com/book, right?
That's it. That's where you'll find it.
All right. Wasn't that interview amazing? If you're anything like me, you have pages full of notes. But here's the thing. Before you head out, I want you to go to facebook.com and join the Speak Your Way to Cash Facebook group. That is where I am. That's where a ton of other speakers are, a ton of other people who listen to the show. We all congregate there and chat. And it's 100% free. Now, if you're ready to take your speaking career to the next level, I have 2 ways for you to do that. One, you can go to ashleynicolekirkwood.com/SYWTC live replay and pick up the live replay. That training is 7 modules, chock full of information. It's crazy. Go over there, read all about it. Or if you want a more personal experience, you already know that you want to be a speaker. You're ready to fully commit and you want someone to walk you through it and save you tons of time Googling and doing it on your own, then book a VIP day with me. You can go to ashleynicolekirkwood.com, scroll down until you see the VIP day section and get more information on that there. All right. Thank you guys again for watching. Please do not forget to leave us a review. That is how we keep this train rolling and get some of the best speakers in the world to get on this show. So please, please, please leave a review. Shoot me a message on Facebook or Instagram, and Facebook in the Speak Your Way to Cash group, Instagram at the Ashley Nicole Show. And I'd be more than happy to chat with you and say hi. All right, y'all have an awesome, awesome day.